All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sasquatch Watch Radio. Today is June 2nd, 2015. The year is already halfway over. Can you believe it? Feels like we just got out of wintertime. I don't understand it. Why has it got to fly by so fast? Anyway, welcome everyone to the show. We appreciate seeing each and every one of you here every single week to enjoy some time with us. And before we get started with the show, as always, we want to mention our sponsor being audible.com. What is Audible, you might ask? Well, it's a website where you can go to and you can download audiobooks to listen to at your pleasure. They have over 185,000 different titles to choose from, so you can pretty much find everything from books to magazines to news articles, you name it. Typically, audible.com's got it. And being a listener to the show gives you an opportunity to not only download your first audiobook for free, but you also get a 30-day trial of the service so that you can give it a test run and see how you like it. How do you do that? Well, you do it by going to audibletrial.com/Sasquatch Watch Radio. Again, to get your free audiobook and your 30-day trial of the service, go to audibletrial.com/Sasquatch Watch Radio. So we hope that you give them a test run and try them out. They do have quite a few books and things to choose from. You can get on there and do searches and find all types of different things to read and, well, actually to listen to, which is the best part of it, especially when you're driving to work or get tired of listening to the music on the radio. You can listen to your favorite book. So give it a trial run. Anyway, we again want to welcome everybody to the show tonight. Our co-host, the Creature Seeker, is running a little bit late tonight. Do not see him in the studio switchboard. So we'll give him a little bit of time to get here. But I did want to mention that I don't pay too much attention to all the different sites out there that actually review podcasts and things like that. So I actually ran across this one by accident. But before I get into it, let's get our co-host in here. How are you doing tonight, Bruce?
Good. How you doing, Billy?
I'm doing fine. I'm just happy that my audio works, so it makes me happy.
We can only keep our fingers crossed, right?
Yeah, because we know it worked there for a while in the beginning of last week, and then it cut out in the middle. So we'll see. We'll see how long it lasts this time. But yeah, I was telling everyone, Bruce, that I don't check all the different sites where people can review podcasts. And I just happened to remember over the weekend that my phone, which all iPhones, I believe, have it, my iPhone has an icon called Podcasts. And you can click on that icon and you can do a search of podcasts. And it's pretty interesting because some of the reviews on this, I haven't been able to find them linked to anything else other than this app. So I decided, hey, I'm going to check these things out. Well, first of all, Bruce, just to make you feel better, okay, our overall rating and review is 4.5 stars out of 5.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 4.5 out of 10.
No. So our overall rating is 4.5 out of 5. So you know what? I feel good about that.
Yeah, that's not too bad, Billy.
I'll take that. But it is funny to read some of the reviews because some people just click the rating and other people take the time to actually put in a review, right? So yeah. I thought that I would mention the most recent 2 that was put in this year, 2015. Folks,
oh boy.
I have to admit that, I do laugh at some of these, but at the same time, I do appreciate it, especially if you're being serious and honest on what you think about the show. So the first one, I'm not going to say who did the review or anything like that. I don't want to put nobody on the spot, but this review came in on January 20th, 2015, and they rated us 2 stars, and they titled it Just Bad. And here's what they said. They said, tried listening, but couldn't any longer. Sounds like you're listening in on someone's phone call. Never talk about anything Bigfoot related. All they do is talk about camping together and eating each other's snacks. Very dull podcast. Well, I see one positive about this. They definitely listen to the show.
Yeah. Well, Billy, they're obviously if they're obviously not talking about your snacks because you never share your snacks.
Well, I know. Exactly. So I have to say it's an honest review. They had to have listened to the show to know that we talk about camping and eating each other's snacks. So that's good.
I thought they were going to say something about the fact that we always talk about the weather. We always actually get dinged for that, Billy.
We do. Yeah, but usually we get emails and stuff for that. None of these reviews talk about that. So this one you're gonna find. This one you're gonna enjoy, Bruce. This person, they thought were very bad. They gave us 1 star. So here's what they said. This one came in just recently, actually, April 2nd, 2015. Says very hard to finish listening to a show. I've tried more than once. Very unorganized. Seemed like I was listening in on someone's boring phone call with the random babbling on and the random phone calls from their buddies babbling about off topics and subject stuff. With that, I'll add that I could hear someone chewing or something, or someone drinking, ice jiggling in a glass, and someone's typing or something in numerous episodes I've attempted to listen to. Now here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. The host with the accent is the most irritating and makes the show worse and harder to listen to than it has to be.
Billy, what's wrong with my accent?
It's that darn northern accent, man. It's that Bostonian stuff.
It's that Yankee accent. Well.
Oh well. You can't please them all, Bruce.
Yeah, no, can't. But you know what? I do have to say this. So they do listen to the show, so that I give them an A for effort there, Billy.
Yeah, exactly. You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Ramble. Liam's been telling me for years that I need an interpreter for myself, so I don't know. I just can't get that southern accent out, but I'll work on it.
Well, Billy, I wouldn't worry too much about the 2 stars.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, well, we got some great guests on tonight, Bruce. I'd gotten an email from a fellow by the name of Dave back some weeks ago, and Dave and Pam contacted us and wanted to share some experiences that they're having up in the southern Adirondacks in New York. Now, you and me both know, Bruce, that the Adirondacks is a great area.
Better than Clearfield County, Billy.
Yes, it is. And so they're going to share some of their experiences. Pam's actually had a very recent sighting. So we'll talk to her about that. But over time, they had mentioned that they found, footprints, they found handprints on the car, and other signs. So I think it's going to be fun to have this discussion with them tonight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call them into the show right now. So y'all are actually going to hear this as I pull up the dialer here. So bear with me, and we will dial them into the show. I'm sure they're listening, so they're expecting this phone call.
Yeah, Billy, just take some care because we don't want this to sound like a bad phone call.
Exactly.
Hello.
Hey, Pam.
Hey.
I'm glad to have you on the show. Is Dave with you too?
Hold on, let me find my speaker button on here so that David can hear us too, okay?
Oh, okay.
There you go. You're on speaker.
How you doing, Dave?
Good, Billy. How are you?
Good, good. I'm glad to have both of you guys on the show. I'm just so thankful that Dave, you took the time to email us, because all of our listeners, including me and Bruce, love to hear witness stories and things that you guys are seeing out there in the field. So we really appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Now, how long have you all lived out there?
Well, we're from this area, but my wife and I lived on a boat, on a trawler, and cruised down the eastern seaboard for a few years. And we came back to the southern Adirondacks to visit, and we fell in love with it all over again. The mountains are beautiful up there.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Buying 10 acres of land, and we rented. We're going to build on it, but we rented a cabin about a mile away, from our property. And
It's been three. This is our third season here in the cabin.
And
Okay.
to set the record straight, I didn't think that there was any validity to the subject of Sasquatch. I thought it was all kind of silly. I didn't know anything about it. As a matter of fact, the first year we were here, I recorded an audio of some kind of strange vocalization outside the cabin. And being a smart aleck like I am, I posted on Facebook and on YouTube, and I said, what is this? Is it a coyote? Is it a fox? And being a smart aleck, I said, it's a Bigfoot. Well, I posted around. Most of the hunters thought it might be a coyote. Some thought it was a fox. Some thought it was an owl. And on a lark, just on a whim, I sent it to a Sasquatch group out west. And he came back and he said, well, it sounds like our Sasquatch, but a different dialect. I'm like, what? I just thought, well, that was the end of it. I just didn't bother with it after that. And then last August, Pam and I were in the car driving up our driveway, and we have a dug well. The dug well is covered with particle board, and it's got a blue tarp over it tied on with a rope. And Pam noticed that the tarp was off. So we had a long dry spell at that point, and I thought, well, it must be a bear or something. I ripped the rope off. So I went to pick the tarp up. I noticed the tarp was in one spot. The rope was someplace else. So I thought, well, it must be a bear. So I'm putting it all back together, and Pam is looking around on the ground. And at this point, I'll let her take this part. This is hers.
Okay.
Well, so I was looking around, and I said to David, a bear wouldn't toss a rope, and a bear can't just do this. This doesn't make sense. And it's not like we have neighbors close by. So I was looking around for some kind of footprint or something, and I found a huge footprint in the mud near a creek bed that runs by our driveway. And I said, David, come here and look at this. And he's looking at it, and he goes, yeah, so what? And I go, no, look, the heel is like here, and then I showed him where like there was a toe print at the other end of it. And he's like, holy crap, what do you suppose that is? And I said, I don't know, Bigfoot? It looks like a Bigfoot footprint to me. So that's the whole real thinking that maybe there possibly could actually be something to the whole Bigfoot thing. It's like, you know about it your whole life. You think about it, but you don't really give it a lot of credence or, is it really real? But at that point, I'm thinking, oh, I think this is real.
Right. So basically, before you all started living out there, I mean, did y'all even give it any second thought that you really believed in the existence of these things?
I did not. Not at all.
Okay.
I didn't about it. I didn't read about it. I didn't care about it.
No, when I grew up in the country, and so growing up in the country, you always hear boogeyman stories and things like that, and, so you think, well, maybe, just like when you're looking up at the stars and you're thinking, are there aliens out there? And you think, yeah, maybe there's a Bigfoot out there in the woods. But when I saw that footprint and the way that the tarp had been taken off the well and the rope was on one side, the tarp was on the other side, and I'm thinking, the wind wouldn't do that. If the rope just rotted and fell off, the wind isn't going to make those see in two different spots. And then when you see a big footprint like that, it's like, holy crap, something with some sort of intent. And it really made me start thinking. And then when he had the vocalization tape, and he posted it around and stuff, and then somebody came back and said, that sounds just like a Bigfoot vocalization. And I thought, holy crap, we really do have Bigfoots around here. Maybe it's true, you know? So now I'm starting to really think that it's a possibility.
Well,
Right.
I had audio on a Native American site, because everybody else, nobody really knew what it was. And immediately they came back and said, that's a Sasquatch imitating a coyote trying to get your dogs into the woods. So we have 2 pit bulls and a German short-hair pointer, and for the first time, our pit bulls would not leave the cabin. The female was hiding under a table, I was cowering on a couch, and the pointer, who would chase anything through the woods, was outside the cabin barking at it, but she would not go in the woods.
She stayed at the edge of the wood line, you know, she wouldn't go down into the woods at all.
Now, we had a couple questions from the chat from Ramble One. Wanted to know, first of all, did y'all make any cast of the footprints you found? And 2, did you measure out the stride? Was you able to find like a second print at all to measure? Okay.
We were so new at this whole thought process that no, we did not. We didn't think to do anything like that. You know, we were just so dumbfounded at even finding a footprint that to us, we were debating, did we really find a real footprint like that, and could it really be as big as we're thinking? He has a picture of it, and I put like me pointing where the back of it is to the front of the toe, with just me with hand gestures, but it's not an actual measurement of any sort. So to answer that one, no, we didn't. We were too stupid at that point.
Yep.
Okay, we had just so y'all know, I don't know how far you are from your speakerphone, but a few people in the chat are asking if you can get like a little closer, so that they can hear you better. Yeah, I think that's a little better. Yeah.
Okay.
Bruce, did you have any questions before I go on?
Yeah. So Billy, let me get this straight. Pam and David they lived on a trawler for like 3 years.
We did. We lived on a boat and we cruised down the eastern seaboard.
Were you escaping someone, or?
No, we had been living in Connecticut, and we had the opportunity to buy this boat, which actually was not anything like a nice boat. It was a truly fixer-upper boat, but we moved aboard and started fixing it up, and we took some time and went down the eastern seaboard for a couple of years.
Oh, okay. So it was your boat. You weren't like stowaways or anything.
No. It was our home.
Okay. All right. So you saw these footprints. They looked huge. Did you think to take any pictures of them or make any casts of them?
We do have. We do have pictures.
You do have pictures?
We do have pictures. Yes.
We have casting material now.
Yeah.
We didn't last year.
No, we didn't. We didn't think that. I mean, to us, to actually come to the realization that there's something like that living right here near us was just too incredible to believe at that point. I mean, we were both still really skeptical at that point, and so then David started researching it. Because when I said, oh, my God, I think it's a Bigfoot, and he's like, oh, please. So then he started researching, and he researched the topic to death. And through his research, he started listening to podcasts and reading books, and with all of that, I just absorbed some of the stuff he was doing, and I spend a lot of time in the woods horseback riding. And so the things that he was learning about, I started putting to practice as I was out in the woods, and I started seeing things. And the more things I saw, I became more and more of a believer.
Well, the next thing that happened, I take star photography at night. I like to do that because I'm night blind. I can't see at night. And I'll set my camera on a tripod, and I'll take 30-second exposures. I'll take maybe an hour's worth. And in early September of last year, I had a whole series of photographs. I'm going through them on my laptop, and they're coming out pretty nice. And then one photograph, there's a tree that's moving.
Like shaking violently.
So, yeah, but none of the other trees were moving, and none of the other frames this happened. So the next day, Pamela goes out. I'm standing where the camera was, and she went into the ravine by the cabin to find it. And she's shaking different trees. And I said, no. And finally I said, go a little bit to your left, the tree. And she said, I can't shake it when it's too big around.
That was a big tree.
So, I mean, that possibly could have been a bear, I suppose. You know, it's one of those things that make you scratch your head. But the big one, what convinced us for sure, was the handprint, which was late in September of 2014. Where we live, there's a lot of dirt roads. It was very, very dry and dusty. And I'd gone into town, and I came back, and on the back of the car, massive handprint. And it didn't make any sense. There were strange lines on the print, at the base of the thumb and on the palm. And I had joined a few Sasquatch groups, so I posted them. I said, does anybody know what a Sasquatch handprint looks like? Because I think we've got one. And nobody did. So finally, a CSI in West Virginia emailed me, and he said, can you send me high-resolution copies of that? So I did. And a couple of days later, he emailed me back, and he said, well, I can't tell you it's a Sasquatch because I don't know what a Sasquatch handprint looks like, but I can tell you that's not human. And if you look at it, you can actually see the fingerprints on it. So, but the heavy lines in the thumb and on the palm threw me off. I had no idea what they were. So finally, I was listening to a podcast a few months ago, and a noted researcher made the mistake of giving out his email address. So I emailed him, and I said, can I show you these handprints? And he came back fairly quickly, and he said, yeah, please do. And I sent them to him, and he came back, and he said, well, I have something to compare those to, and yes, that's from Sasquatch. So that sold me right there. Then I was convinced. I was totally convinced.
That's cool. Very cool. Let me, before we go on, we've got a caller on hold. So let me get them in here. Caller from the 304 area code, you're on the air.
What's up?
Hey, who are we talking to?
Fred. Interdimensional man.
Fred Saluka.
Oh, no.
That's me. Bruce, what are you talking about, man?
Fred, I just meant it's nice to hear from you.
Thank you. I'm enjoying your show.
Fred, do you got a question for Dave or Pam?
No, I really, I'm listening. I think it's really interesting.
Oh, okay. So you called in to listen in.
Right.
All right. Very good.
Fred was the recipient of the 2014 Preacher Weekend Interdimensional Bigfoot Award. So he's kind of a celebrity now.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
if you go
thanks
to
for
his Facebook
listening.
page, you can see the photograph of his trophy.
See the photograph of his what?
It says award.
Oh, congratulations on your award.
Well, thank you. See, Bruce don't believe that Bigfoot can be interdimensional. To Bruce, he's flesh and blood, and that's it. You can't talk to him.
All right. Thanks, Fred. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you. Anytime.
All right. Keep listening in, Fred. We got you on here.
I am. I'm going to listen.
Yeah. Keep listening in, Fred, but don't call in again.
Oh, man. Pam, my understanding is, I guess you recently had a sighting, correct?
I did. We just got back. We leave the cabin in late fall, and we head down to Florida for the winter. So we close the cabin up completely, and it doesn't get used again until we come back in the spring. And so when we got back here at the beginning of May, I came over to the cabin and I dropped the cats off. But we just weren't. When we close up the cabin, I mean, literally, we drain the pipes, turn the water off. There's a whole process that you have to go through to reopen the cabin. So we were exhausted, and David said, let's stay one more night in the RV over at your mom's house And, so I said, well, let me go put the cats at the cabin, so if there's any mice that moved in through the wintertime, they'll start getting rid of the mice for the night, and we'll go over tomorrow, and we'll start opening up the cabin. So I did that, and when I went back when I came over here, I did a quick check around the cabin. We've learned a lot more about Sasquatch activity while we were in Florida this last winter, and so I did a quick search around the property, and I found a lot of arched trees that were pinned. I found stuff on both sides of our driveway. It was just amazing, the things that I was finding around the cabin, and my eyes were really opened up to, holy crap, we live amongst them. So I dropped the cats off. I went on back over to my mom's for the night. The next day, we came back over to the cabin, got ourselves settled in, and David even said to me when we got here the next day, he said, did you see this tree on the side of the cabin? We have a small, maybe 5-foot small pine tree that's right next to the cabin doorway, and it was broken and twisted. And I'm like, holy crap, that wasn't broken yesterday.
Honey, you're on the radio, so holy crap.
Oh, so what? So I was like, that's new, fresh from like last night. So they knew we were back. And that was whatever that's supposed to symbolize, I have no idea. All I'm hoping is that they don't get aggressive at any point in time. So then the next day, we went to bed that night, and the next day, I got up. Our one pit bull normally doesn't ask to go out very early in the morning, but I happened to wake up early. It was bright daylight out by 5:30 up here in New York, and so I was awake, and she was asking to go outside, and when the one dog wants to go out, so does my pointer. And if the pointer goes out, she immediately goes running off into the woods and starts barking. And I thought, no, it's way too early for you to be barking out in the woods. So I threw her on a leash, and I went outside. My pit went down the driveway to go off in the grassy area to do her business, and out of just, random curiosity, I walked over towards the car thinking, well, last year, it had touched the back of the car and put a handprint on there. So it's 5:30 in the morning. I haven't had coffee yet. I'm just kind of walking over that way, look at the back of the car, and I'm like, holy crap, there's a brand new, fresh, dewy handprint on the back of the car. So I yelled to Ruby, our pit bull, and I'm like, Ruby, get in here right now. Because, the handprint was darn fresh. I yanked my pointer and on the leash, and we run back into the cabin, and I ran upstairs, and I said, David, there's a handprint on the back of the car. And he's half asleep, and he said, well, then go outside and take a picture of it.
I'm not a morning person, Billy.
So I grabbed his camera, and he's got a pretty nice camera, and it's got all these fancy settings on it, and all I know is I need to make sure I set it on auto setting for everything, because I don't know how to set it for anything fancy. So I'm standing at the back of the car, trying to make sure that it's all set on auto before I take a picture. And just as I click a couple pictures of the handprint, I heard heavy, heavy footfalls 10 feet from me on the other side of the pine trees, just on the side of the driveway. That scared the effing crap out of me. So I ran in the house, ran up the stairs, and I'm like, David, it's out there. It's right there. It's out there. So he jumps out of bed, throws his jeans on. I'm standing on the front porch looking out the screen door, and about 25 feet in front of me, we have this little small group of pine trees straight ahead of me. And I'm just standing there, kind of staring out the door, waiting for him to put his shoes on and come outside with me. And all of a sudden, directly in front of me, between the pine trees, what I thought was a shadow of the trees behind it, it ducked. So it was standing right there looking back at me, and I didn't even realize it until it moved. And when it moved, it ducked down behind the trees, and then it was gone. And I'm screaming for David in this whisper scream, oh, my God, I just saw it, I saw it. And I went running inside to make him hurry up, and he came outside, and he started yelling at it. Come out right now. Show yourself. It's 5:30 in the morning. Just show yourself. But at that point, it was gone. I don't know where it went, but it was gone. But it did. It came back through the driveway a couple more times because the next morning, all that next week, there'd be like a little fresh print of something. And even a forehead print and a nose print where like it leaned its face up against the side of our car, looking in the windows.
Yeah, Pamela has a horse, and she had a saddle in the back, so it smelled like horse. She also have the dogs, and I'm sure the car smells like dogs.
So, but I think at this point there hasn't been any new handprints on either of the cars, and I think the novelty of the vehicle being in the driveway has worn off, so they're just moving on their business, coming through the property wherever it is that they go.
Yeah, Billy, maybe
what kind of car? What kind of car was it, or is it?
it's a Kia Sorento. It's an SUV.
Oh, what year?
2013.
Maybe the Sasquatch was just trying to check out the new line.
Is that Corinthian leather in there?
There's a Kia commercial for you.
Well, let's give you and your listeners a flavor for where we live. Our town is 38,000 acres, and 550 people live here. I mean, it's
wow.
We got state land all around us. The Adirondack Park is the largest park in the United States at 6.1 million acres. So there's a lot of places for Sasquatch to go. And we're only guessing here. We have no idea. We're still really new to this. But we think that they're moving from maybe down the valley, where they probably spent the winter, and going up to the lakes on top of the mountain. Last year, all the activity that we found was in late August, September, and October. And then we had nothing after that. So they moved on again.
But we weren't looking for anything. You know, that's when we really started paying close attention to things. So it could be this is their spring movement. And, I mean, and this is all totally theoretical because who knows how they behave and what they do. And but it seems like we've got a lot of activity. There's a lot of markers and a lot of trail areas. But right across the road from us is state land and hiking trails and a mountain lake. So I'm just guessing. And there's been a lot of theories that they travel by creek beds and things like that, which we have all of that on our property.
Now, Lori in the chat room wanted me to ask you guys, did you all say that you took photos of the handprints on the vehicle?
Yeah.
Sure did.
Did you all post those up anywhere where people can see them?
I posted them everywhere trying to figure out what it was. Oh, yeah, a lot of Sasquatch groups I belong to.
Okay.
David has a
Got a blog.
and he posted a lot of stuff on the blog that he writes about our daily life.
Okay. Do y'all mind posting them on the Sasquatch Watch Radio Facebook page, and then that way people can go over there and see them?
I'll do it right now. As a matter of fact, you can talk to Pam and I'll post them.
All right, perfect. Cool. All right, that way folks can see them since they're asking about the pictures. That'd be really cool. Now, Pam, I mean, does any of this worry you? I mean, do you think that that they could become aggressive, or do you think they're just kind of curious and wanting to see what you guys are doing?
Well, I'm a little concerned. I mean, the more that we talk about this stuff and the more research we've done, I've seen a lot of instances in our research where these things can get aggressive and they do get nasty, and they're not exactly a small creature. So, if my dogs are out running in the 29 acres that we have around the cabin surrounded by state land, and my pointer goes pretty far out in the woods, if these things get nasty, I mean, my dog is going to be squatch bait quickly. They could get angry around the cabin. I leave for work really early in the morning, so I've got to leave the house at 5:30 in the morning to head to my job when I go out. It makes me a little nervous. I'm always very wary. I take 2 steps out the cabin door and I look around before I go any further. But so far, we leave them alone, they leave us alone. And we've had bear come through our property before. So you know, it's the same thing. You leave the bear alone, we leave them alone, so it's okay. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Now, you hear a lot of people that talk about, when they have a lot of activity on the property and stuff, you hear people talk about they come up and they bang on the house and stuff. Have y'all had any of that at all?
We have not, and I wonder if maybe having our dogs outside has made a difference, that they don't, like I said, we don't bother them, they don't bother us, kind of a thing.
Yeah, so it sounds like this is more of a kind of like what you said, a casual, moving through the area and seeing something new and just checking things out for a while, making sure that you're not out, you're not out hunting them, maybe.
Right, and that's it. We've gone around the immediate area of the cabin. I've taken photos of some of the arches and the different markings that they have in the vicinity of the cabin itself. But most recently, we were down by the creek bed, and we were looking, and I said to David, look, right in the creek bed, in the side of the mud, you could see some footprints, but it was not castable because it's in the water. You can't cast something that's in the edge of the bank. So I know that they're here. I know that they're close. There was, I don't know if it was a couple weeks ago or so, we were over at our property, which is a mile from the cabin, and we were sitting on our deck over there, and down in the valley, we could hear that barking laugh that they do. You could hear one in one direction, and then you heard something answer it in another direction, and that went on for maybe 5 minutes of them going back and forth, and then it was quiet. So there's definitely some activity around here.
Now, how far? I know you said that you don't really have any neighbors. How far would be your closest neighbor?
Well, we do and we don't. We at the top of our driveway, which our driveway is about a quarter mile long. If you go to the left of our driveway and go about 100 yards or so, there's a small house where an older gentleman lives. And then go probably another half a mile or so, and there's a small homestead farm that's there. But then from that point, you've got to go at least a mile or two before you come into any other houses around us. Okay,
so yeah, you're really kind of out there by yourself. Now, do you know any of the neighbors? Have y'all ever talked about anything, or they mentioned anything that they've seen?
We have a neighbor who owns a 100-acre hunting camp that's between our cabin and our property that we own, and we've mentioned something to them, and they just kind of scoff at us like, yeah, no, you're crazy. We've said something to a friend of ours who lives several miles from us. He lives on a different road over a ways. He's open to suggestion. He goes horseback riding with me, and I've pointed out some certain things to him, and I've said, just if you use an open mind and you look at how these trees are arched and pinned, tell me how that happened in Mother Nature. And he's like, and when he looks at it, he says, yeah, no, that couldn't really happen by itself. So he's open to the possibility, although he's never seen one, but he's open to the possibility, A girlfriend of mine used to live in this area probably about 15 miles from here, and that was 20 years ago. And she had a couple of experiences where she heard a lot of strange noises out in the back pasture, and there was one incident where she was fixing her back fence, and her dogs came running out of the woods and sat next to her growling, a low, deep growl, and she had the creepy, odd feeling that there was somebody or something out there. And her dogs had been living on the mountain for a long time, and they had no problem with chasing bear and chasing coyote or whatever might be coming around the farm, and they were shaken. She said she knew something odd was out there. So, and she totally believes they exist, and she thinks that that's probably what was watching her as she was fixing the fence.
Gotcha. Bruce, you got any questions?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, have you ever thought of maybe positioning some trail cams around your property?
We did last year, actually. We put a trail cam in our driveway near the well where they had taken the tarp off at one point. And as soon as we put trail cams up, there was not a single sign of anything. There was no more noises. There was no more activity. So we moved the camera over onto our property where we found a nest, and we found some odd trail marker things over on our property. And we were finding some footprints over there, but they weren't deep enough to really do anything with. The ground up here is pretty hard packed and pretty rocky, so it's hard to get a good footprint. As soon as we put the trail cameras up where we were finding footprints, gone. There was nothing else to be seen. So
I've heard of similar circumstances where people have a lot of activity. They put the trail cams up, and then all activity ceases.
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to us.
Yeah. David's got the handprints up, posted on your site.
On your Facebook page.
Yep.
Perfect. All right, and I'll go over there and then grab it and then put the link up for everybody. Appreciate that, Dave.
Not a problem.
Go for it, Bruce. I'm sure you got more questions while I'm working on this.
Well, so I'm just sort of curious. In these Bigfoot groups that you're part of, have you ever done a sort of live surveillance with other people on your property?
No, and quite honestly, I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm afraid if we disturb anything that they will get nasty.
Do you think that they're aggressive? I mean, do they seem aggressive?
They don't at this point, but I'm afraid of what could happen if we start messing with them.
You want to tell them the tree story? All right.
Well, yeah, tell us the story.
You really want to hear it?
No, because
yeah, sure.
Yeah, your ratings might go down to 1 point if I tell the story.
Well, I was just going to say, Dave, we really can't go that much further down from here, so we have nothing to lose.
This is just a story that's going to make you. I don't have any proof. It's going to make you scratch your head and say, yeah, all right, whatever.
It's completely theoretical.
I cut a lot of trees in my life. I heated with firewood for a long, long time. And 2 years ago, 2013, I went to our property, and I found a fairly good-sized tree I wanted to cut down, so I notched it and I back cut it. I turned off my chainsaw, set it on the ground. I pushed the tree. As it started to go over, I stepped back in case it kicked. Next thing I know, I woke up and I was on the ground. I was unconscious. I got hit by another tree, a second tree, from off to my left. Not a big one. It was like a big, tall sapling. Now, we had the property logged the year before that, so I assumed, well, it was just a leaner, and I must have shaken it loose. I didn't notice it. I was all by myself, and it must have shaken loose, and I was unlucky enough to get hit square in the head with it. Well, my friends that came over looked at it, and they said, what are the odds that you can get hit in the head with a tree like that, square in your noggin? And I broke my neck. I was in the hospital for 3 days.
Wow.
Last year I had to have a neck operation. So last winter, Pam and I are sitting in our RV, and she said, you know the tree you cut down? I said, yeah. She said, well, it's like maybe 50, 75 feet from that Sasquatch nest we found. I said, yeah. She said, maybe you made the Sasquatch really angry, and it hit you with that tree. So we laughed, and then I stopped laughing. I didn't think it was so funny after that. So I just take that with a grain of salt. I'm just telling a story.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that, because it seems to me that when you were
the Native Americans that lived in this area said that Sasquatch had two weapons. They used rocks and they used trees as weapons. So maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. It's a head scratcher and a neck breaker.
Well, it seems to me that if you were cutting down a tree and this tree was leaning against one of its branches, that when you fell the tree, this other tree could have caught you. I mean, that seems perfectly logical to me.
The tree that hit him was nowhere near the tree that he cut down. It was at least 40 feet off to his left, and it was a long, tall sapling that was maybe at the base of it was maybe a foot in diameter, maybe, but it was a long, tall, skinny tree that the end of it that hit him was maybe 6 inches in diameter. I mean, the odds of it hitting him so squarely in the head from so far away, it's just so bizarre. And I'm not saying that a Sasquatch hit him in the head with a tree. We have no idea how that happened and why it happened or anything. But the more research we do, it just seems odd that he cuts a tree down that lands near the Sasquatch nest, and he gets whacked in the head by a tree and breaks his neck.
Well, were you able to examine that sapling and see if it was actually cut by a saw or if it was broken?
No, it was pushed over. It was not a tree that was cut.
Yeah, it wasn't sawed.
No, it was not a sawed tree. But that's why we thought that, because we'd had the land logged the year before, that he was thinking that it was something that was leaning against another tree, and the vibration from dropping the big tree made it fall. It loosened it, and it fell, and it just happened to hit him in the head, which is entirely possible. You know, they're called widow makers. When there's a leaner in the woods like that, and you cut another tree down, and you get whacked by something on the side. We have no idea how it happened, but it's just a curiosity point that he drops a tree near a Sasquatch nest, and then he gets hit in the head with a tree.
Yeah.
It's a head scratcher.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that.
Neither do we, and we certainly don't claim that he was hit in the head by a Sasquatch at all, because there's no proof of that, you know, none whatsoever.
You know, I thought I'd get away from Sasquatch for a bit, and I bought an anthropology book, and I opened it up, and on page 1 of chapter 1, they show an Etruscan plate, which is an Italian plate from 700 BC to 300 AD, and on that plate is a Sasquatch. In one hand he's got a rock, and the other hand he's got a tree. I thought, you know what? I can't seem to get away from this. It just follows me everywhere.
So do you think that it's just one individual, or do you think there's actually a family unit or a group of individuals that are, you know, causing all this ruckus around your property?
As I'm trying to theorize what the tree arches indicate, on the one side of our driveway, we have tree arches of 5 different sizes. So in theory, I mean, who knows what's actual and what isn't, but if you go by the size of the tree arches, say that there's a family on the one side of our driveway, and on the other side where there's tree markers, they're only single tree bends, and so that would indicate that that's the side where lone Sasquatches have to go. And again, it's only conjecture and theory because we don't know. You know, we haven't actually, other than the shadow sighting that I saw of the head that was in front of me and then ducked and was gone, and we've seen varying footprint sizes. We have seen 3 different size footprints on the property. So that would tell me that there's at least 3 different Sasquatches that wander through here.
Well, you know, we had this past winter was fairly harsh. We had a lot of snowfall. Is it possible that it was the snow that bent the trees over?
If you look at the way that the trees are bent, no, because, you know, you have a whole stand of trees that are standing perfectly fine, and then you've got a tree that's bent over, arched, and pinned by something coming from a completely different direction. So, I mean, if you're looking at it, and you're standing there looking at it from a physics point of view, it just can't happen. Something has to have bent it and pinned it, just the way that they're bent, you know. And when we were traveling we travel by RV, and I take my horse from New York to Florida and then from Florida back to New York, and we stop at different campgrounds on our way, and I ride different places. And there's a place in South Carolina that we like to stop, and trail riding in South Carolina, I came across a lot of the same type of tree bends. And I actually heard something at one point on one of the trails there also, and it scared the crap out of me, and my horse refused to go any further. And I'm like, holy crap, we're out in the middle of nowhere. You got to go. But when you look at these tree bends, if you're out in the woods and you see the way that they're bent, and you've got like two trees together, like a double arch, and then they're pinned by another tree and they're woven together, it can't happen by a tree fall, or it can't happen by wind fall the way that they fall. And there are times where, of course, you look at it and you're like, oh, yeah, the wind blew that tree over. Or, yeah, it looks like, the big giant branches fell out of that tree that's right next to it. And you can tell the difference between that, if you look. But you've got to be inquisitive enough to actually look at what you're looking at.
So you totally ruled out human intervention on those trees.
Well, usually where I'm riding, and especially around here, nobody's on our property. So nobody's going to come here and be bending those trees over the way they are. And the trails that I ride in South Carolina belong to a hunt group, and it is forbidden for anybody to walk the trails. You're dropped off at hunt areas, or you're on horseback, and you have to stay on the trails that are designated riding trails. And the trees that are bent are just way too huge for a person to bend. They're too tall. They're too big around. It's not something humanly possible.
Tell Billy I just posted a picture.
David just posted a picture of my double tree bend in South Carolina that I found that was woven by a broken tree that was about 10 feet off the ground. On your Facebook.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why his pictures ain't coming up on there. I'm thinking that it probably has something to do with the way I have the permission set. So I need to figure out, because what I did was I went over to Dave's page and actually pulled the handprint from the back of the vehicle and put that up.
Actually, I got a whole Sasquatch album that's public that anybody can go to.
Yeah, on his.
Okay. I'll just post a link to your Facebook page, and then people can go over. Okay, that'll work. Yep. Real quick, we have another caller on the line. Caller from the 276 area code. You're on the air.
Hi, Billy.
Hey, who's this?
This is Phil Thackeray. How you doing?
Hey, Phil. Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing fine. I'd like to give a big shout out to everybody in the chat room. Terra Thunder is right here. I haven't gone anywhere. I'm the guy that's been trying to call you every week, and every time something else happens, somebody calls, or I've got it on speakerphone, and it's not going to work. So I finally got it right.
You got it working
smartphone.
now.
I've got a smartphone, and it's only as smart as the user, so there you go.
That's exactly right.
Hey, I'm excited about you having a conference here close to my home.
Yep.
That'll be nice.
Yep.
I hope that works out, and everything you said about it's true. They could squatch for days out there.
Oh yeah,
on that one.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
Now I do have I do have a question for Pam and Dave.
Okay.
All right.
Now, back in 2012, I researched an area down by Holston River, and there was tree bows everywhere, just like as you described, and I wanted to know if the tree bows you have on your property, are the limbs stripped off of them, or do they still have the limbs on them?
They have the limbs.
They do have the limbs. A lot of the ones I'm seeing, the limbs are stripped off, and they're pinned in a very suspect manner. Mm-hmm. That's what I look for is how they're pinned. Yeah, how they're pinned to the ground. Is it suspect? How big the tree is and all that.
And when you
I found
when I'm out horseback riding and I'm in the woods and I see these things, What I look for is, okay, so if the tree is bent, say, going from left to right, and then there's a tree coming from a perpendicular angle to it that is nowhere near, if that tree were to fall down on its own, how did that pin that tree over that way? It's just not.
Well, yeah.
It's just not physical.
Yeah, that, and also too, what I look for is what is pinning the tree, and the one I saw, the one that really just threw me for a loop was the sticks that were actually logs and branches, deadfall that were pinning it down. It made a diamond shape.
Yep, they make
and
or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it was making a diamond shape, and the one log that was on it had moss growing on it, which means
they picked it up.
It had been on the ground for a long time, and it magically moved over and placed itself on the top of that tree to help hold it down. And it was a stout tree. Of course, now what happens to them is they'll, if you observe them, as the tree grows, because they won't die, but as it grows, it'll break, and it'll have it'll be pointed outwards. In other words, like after a few years of being bowed over, it'll grow. That part that's bowed will break and die, and then you'll have like a tree that's pointed. It's like pointing in a direction. You know what I'm saying? It's not pinned anymore, of course, but the dead part's gone, and you got it's bent, but it's pointing in a direction.
And the other thing that I keep finding too, if you're finding the trees that are arched over like that, sometimes what I find is there's a tree that's actually broken about 10 feet up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you look around a little bit, you find another tree that's actually arched. So what I'm thinking is, as they're trying to bend it, they break one every now and then. It's like, oh, shit, I broke that one. And so then they got to go bend another one.
Well, what happens is that, because I've been photographing them for years, and I can show you in my pictures, they'll start out arched, and then the next year they'll break. You know, because where it's pinned down to the ground, it seems to kill it or something in the top part of the tree. So it'll break, and then it'll be freestanding, of course, again, and won't be pinned anymore. But it'll have that bow to it, and it's lost, about 4 or 5 feet at the top of the tree.
Right. I'm going to start looking at that because I didn't.
Yeah, look
that way. So now you've given me something else to look at when I'm out there looking.
Well, yeah, because just study them. In other words, as the years tick by, just keep an eye on them and see what they do, because you're doing the same thing I did pretty much. I don't want to touch anything. I didn't want to mess with anything. I didn't want to touch it. Now, the strangest one I ever found, I don't know if you're going to find one of these or not, was the one, it was about a 13-foot tall, started out as a 13-foot tall tree. The branches were stripped off, and it was, and Billy's seen a picture of it, and top is bent over and it's stuck in the ground, and it makes, you seen the St. Louis Arch. Well, that's what this looks like. It looked like the St. Louis Arch. It was about 6 foot tall, and it had another tree that was drug over and placed on top of it. Now, of course, it's broke, died. The part that was stuck in the ground has died, and now it's just, I got a picture of it too, but that was really strange. But the other thing you want to look for while you're on your land is ambush. You want to look for anything that's going to be like a hunting ambush.
Oh, I find a lot of those.
We have one on our property.
We have one on our property. We have one here at the cabin. And the place where I found a lot of those is the hunting camp that we stop at in South Carolina. It's a campground for horseback riding as well as a hunting ground. They do, I hate to say this, but they're basically like canned hunts. They've got tree stands. They feed areas for the wild hog and the pig, and people pay to go hunting there. But I was riding some of their more remote trails, and I was taking photograph after photograph after photograph of these, what we had known as nests. But the more I'm looking at them, and they're right along the trails where they feed the hogs and the deer, and I'm like, holy crap, I think they're hunting blinds. They create these as hunting blinds. And it's amazing because if you don't really pay attention to what you're looking at, the average Joe walking through there would never see it. But because I'm on search for this stuff, I see the trees are bent over. They take things from other areas. I mean, you see tree branches that don't belong. There'll be pine boughs, but there's not a freaking pine tree anywhere near it. So these things are lined with all these different tree branches, but those trees aren't growing there. And I'm like, holy crap, something made that.
Right, yeah. And also, too, which you might want to look for is what I call them, there's a big debate about it, that does Sasquatch use tools? Does Sasquatch, have any, I was told by a Bigfoot researcher, Bigfoot can run down a deer, and I was like, well, no, I don't know, but whatever.
Wait, are you saying there's some kind of disagreement in the Sasquatch community over things?
Yeah, well, what happened was I found a very unique hunting setup, and it back in 2012, I was just kind of getting into it, and I didn't know anything about Sasquatch. Nothing can prepare you anyway when you go out and start looking. You can research it to death, and you're still not prepared.
No, when you're boots on the ground and looking, and you're just absolutely amazed at the things you find.
Oh yeah, most definitely. But anyway, I found something quite amazing. At least I think it is. And the tools they use, people aren't going to recognize them as tools because we can't use them because. There's a few things, it's just like the 12-foot long spear I found suspended in the air. I was just like, well, and it was right behind the hunting blind. And how this thing worked was they used a real long spear, a pole, so to speak. It was a young maple tree, stripped of branches, about 12 feet long, came to a pretty good point. And they'd stand behind this makeshift blind, and had a double row of X's coming up the center, and it was green on each side of this. And on the other side of the game trail, there was a tree bow. It was about a 7, 8 foot tall pine tree, stripped of branches, pinned down by a log. So we were trying to figure out what the heck this thing was. But unfortunately, I didn't get to see it when it was in operation. I got to see it after it was discovered, and they, whatever it was, dismantled a lot of it. But enough was there to tell what was going on. So we speculated about how it would work, what it would use, da-da-da. But anyway, the tree bow on the opposite side of the trail was actually used as a brace. And how we found that out was that when I picked up the log that was pinning the tree down, I said, if there's wear on the top of this tree where it's pinned down by a log by going back and forth used as a brace, I said, this thing was used as a brace. I picked up the log and looked, and the top of that tree, and I have pictures of it, is wore as can be.
Wow.
And I thought, well, golly, this it couldn't be. You know what I mean? You're just in amazement after this. You're like, but it'd work. All you have to do is stand there, wait for one to come by, pop it, it runs off, you wait for another one. You
Right.
pop it, and then when you're done, you go out, collect them, your work's done.
And that makes sense. And actually, there's something on our property where there's a tree that's like bent down and pulled around, almost like a catapult, but a sideways catapult.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very bizarre. When I looked at it, I thought to myself, well, that's like one of those little hairpin things that you did as a kid that you stung somebody with, You release it, and it pops and it'll snack you. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen, and the tree is way too big for anybody to have done that. You know, it's just too big around for a person to pull it around and stick it behind a tree and have it be like a swapper. You know, you push it out. Somehow, and it's going to come around and it's going to smack you really hard. That's going to kill you.
Right, yeah, and if you know your timing's good, you know when that deer's going to come by, you can pull the plug on that, let it smack it real good, or knock its head off, or break its neck, or whatever, and dinner's served.
And we have one of those, and it's right next. Well, you're calling them a hunting blind. Some people call them a nest, and it's right on a game trail on our property. It's when we found this, it's like, holy cow, what is this? You know, and all of these are what pointed us to believing that these things exist.
Well, yeah, you know, that's the hard part, trying to wrap your head around, is there really something out there that is this creative?
Right.
And I was just like, you know, because at the time in 2012, you know, I got the Bigfoot can run down a deer, you know, and I was just like, oh, well, that's fine and all, but whatever did this used its brain, not its back.
Yeah. Well, when we were in South Carolina, I think this really solidified it for me, because as I'm out riding on the trails, and I ride by myself because my husband, he doesn't ride. So when we're traveling, I'm a lone rider on these trails. I'm going out miles out into the wilderness. And one of these trails ran along a swampy area in South Carolina. And as I'm riding the trails, I'm looking at the signs. There's arched trees. Some of these trails are cut right through arched trail things. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm riding right through Bigfoot country here. You know, these are definite trail markers. And I'm right in the midst of a cypress swamp where a trail goes, and you can't leave the trail, because if you go one way or the other, you're going to be in the cypress swamp. There's a little bit of high ground, but the whole trail was, there's tree arches on both sides of it. And at one point, my horse literally stopped, and he's like puffing, and he's looking around, and he's snorting, and he's not wanting to go anywhere. And I'm like, Bud, we're right in the middle of this. We got to go. And off in the distance, I heard a whoop and a holler, and I thought, holy crap, I am in trouble. I need to get out of here. And especially the stories I've heard of the southern Sasquatches can be a lot more aggressive than what is in the Northwest and the Northeast. And I'm thinking, crap, I'm in the middle of their territory. I'm out in the middle of this damn cypress swamp, and there's a distant hoop and a holler, and my horse is stopping. I'm like, I got to go. And
oh, gosh.
I did not have David always says, the number one rule, take your camera with you everywhere you go. Always have your camera. And, of course, I didn't have my camera. But the hoop and the holler that I heard in the distance, I spurred my horse. I wear little bumper spurs, and I spurred him, and I'm like, we're out of here, bud. Let's go. And I took off at a gallop to get the heck out of that cypress swamp, because the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I thought, no way, am I going to get eaten by a Sasquatch out here in the swamp? But I'm thinking that I see the most activity along waterways and swamp areas. Everything I've done in the woods, if there's water nearby, is where I see the most activity.
Yeah, that's where all this went on, was down by a river here in Southwest Virginia. And there's actually, what happened was there was the hunting blind thing I just described to you. It was up on the hill. But down at the river, there was another one. They had took that one down because my friend had discovered it, and shortly after he discovered it, it had been mysteriously dismantled. And then, of course, when I came along, took pictures of it and everything, I can only show you what a shadow of its former self. But now the one down at the river, that one was pretty unique also. It used a different kind of tool, though. From what I can tell, I haven't been able to get back there to see if what I think it used is for real or not. But there was what I thought was a symbol stuck in a tree. and it looked sort of like an arrow. You know, it was a stick probably about 4 foot long, and it had two branches coming off one end, and it was, you know, just straight on the other.
Right.
But it looked almost like an arrow, you know.
You know, it's funny
But
because I go riding a lot. I go horseback riding all over the place, and a lot of the trails I ride, if you look off into the sides, and I think these things really use the trails that are already cut. Why use something that's not there, you know?
And they like wide trails, don't they?
Yeah, they do, and they mark them hard. They really do mark these trails on both sides, and sometimes right over the top. I'll be riding along, and there'll be an arch right over a main trail, and I'm like, holy crap, there's one right there. But I also find a lot of times, if you're looking off to the side, like you're saying, you know, there's going to be a straight log or a stick of some sort that'll be 8 to 10 foot long, wedged in the trees somehow, going straight across, perfectly horizontal. And I'm sorry, but how does a branch fall out of a tree and land perfectly horizontal like that?
Well, a lot of times, what my line of thinking is that that these things that we're seeing like that, wedged in trees, you know, and the thing I saw was rather small, and I was just like, well, there's no way it could have fell out of a tree and ended up like that. It looked like somebody just stuck it into the tree like that, and of course it's not there now, but and I think they just stick it there and use it later. It's a tool that I think, you know, I'm speculating, of course, but I'm speculating that it's a tool, and they just leave them where they last used it.
Yeah, and
you know, they don't carry them around with them, in other words.
No, it's like they use it and then they hang it somewhere. Like, okay, I'm done with it. But
they just hang them.
I mean, how do you go through the woods and you can be way back in the middle of no man's land, and there's a stick, and I use that word lightly because they're like 10 foot long, but
sure.
sitting there perfectly horizontally amongst a couple of trees. That just doesn't seem possible. You know, I'm looking at that going, okay, why is there a branch hanging perfectly horizontal from a tree that isn't anywhere near here? It doesn't. The bark on that doesn't match any tree right there. So it didn't fall out of either tree that it's wedged against.
Right. And now if one end of it looks like it's been chewed on, then you might have something, because it might have been used as a long spear. Because that's what I found was it looked like, because I took pictures of it. Somebody asked me, says, "Oh, well, you got beavers? You got beavers there? Because it looks like a beaver chewed on that."
No, you know what beavers
Yeah.
do.
Well, no, there's no beavers at this river. Not at least not in this part, especially that high up on the hill. You know, because when I live in the mountains, so you know everything's up and down. So, but anyway.
So a beaver chew is distinct. You know what a beaver.
Oh yeah. But when it's chewed to a point, you know, you can tell when the tip's been modified by a chew. You can tell there. Now, there's something else I wanted to tell not only you all but everybody else is that there is I find this real interesting. There's a guy that's doing some scientific research on bones from you know how you can find bone piles.
Yep.
A lot of people are finding bone piles. Well, they're taking the dental marks off of these bone piles, and what they're trying to do, they're not trying to prove Sasquatch, of course, but what they're trying to prove is that there is something out there that has yet to be discovered.
Right.
Unknown chewing on these bones. So he's put a call out for everybody that if they find a bone pile, whether, you know, usually they're arranged, and a lot of times they're different animals, different species, all in one pile. If you find some with some teeth marks on them, you know, turn them into him. He's doing work on it, and what it is, they're just trying to generate interest and prove that there is something out there.
Well, if I find that, I'll contact somebody, but I don't usually find anything like that.
Yeah, some people do and some people don't. I haven't run across any bone piles myself. Now, some have. There's probably a few people out there say, yeah, I've run across them, but those are important. And I think also, too, if we find more unique hunting strategies, the more of those all of us can document. And it doesn't prove Sasquatch, but it does prove that there's something going on.
There's absolutely something. There's certainly something out there with a brain.
Yeah, that's very creative.
Yeah.
And that's all I can say about that. And they're very in tune with nature, and they're very in tune with the land. And they can create things. They can create ways to hunt. It's no problem. And usually I think I have a family unit out here, and I think it's 4 of them. I think it's 2 females, a male, and a young male.
Well, and
young males and adolescent.
The whole issue when we first got back here to the cabin, and all of a sudden there was a handprint on the car the very first night that we were back at the cabin, and all of a sudden there's a fresh handprint on the car. And actually, like a couple of days later, after the dust had come up on the back windshield, you could actually see an overlay of 2 handprints. So it was like there was a small handprint, and you could see a dusting of the larger adult thumb over the small handprint. So
right.
You can see that, like, the 2 of them had come through, like maybe the younger one came by and the mama or papa said, hey, what are you doing? We need to go this way. But after the curiosity of our car being in the driveway for a few days, and after it touched it, looked in the windows and whatever, the whole curiosity of the car in the driveway in their area wore off. And so, they're not touching the car anymore. And so it just leads me to believe that we're on, I don't want to call it a Sasquatch highway, but, it's their trailway of wherever they're coming and going from. And then all of a sudden something was different, so they had to check it out again. And thankfully they don't bother us, per se, other than a handprint here and there.
Well, as a rule, they I think, just from what I can tell, they love to observe.
Yeah.
They like to watch you.
Right. And that's found because that morning when I saw the one that was looking back at me, because I think I freaked them out as much as they freaked me out, and so it was looking at me from behind the little stand of pine trees, and when it realized that I saw it, which I didn't realize I saw it until it moved, and then it ducked down behind the pine trees and it was gone. And that's the last that we've pretty much, other than a couple of handprints thereafter, I haven't seen them. I haven't seen any footprints through the yard. The footprints go up through the creek bed, but there's been nothing, they're not bothering the cabin. They're not coming into the main yard of the cabin. They're not doing anything untoward,
We heard them, though, on our property.
We did, and I said that earlier, that we heard them, calling each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, have you heard them call? Have you heard anything suspect recently?
Actually, I worry about my dogs because I have a German short-hair pointer who loves to run through the woods, and I worry about her because she runs along their trail areas. And there was an evening, and she won't come to my husband. David can call for her, and Olivia just totally ignores him. And he was out there. We like to have them in by dusk, not only for Sasquatch reasons, but also we've got a lot of coyotes in the area. So he went out, and he was calling. She was off in the distance barking, and he heard a distinct tree whack as Olivia was out barking. And he comes in, and he said, I heard a tree whack. You better get her in here. So I went out, and I hollered for her. And I didn't hear anything, but I hollered for her, and she came running right in with no hesitation. So there's definitely something out there near us. But like I said, they haven't bothered us. They haven't bothered my dogs. So I feel pretty confident. We came home one day, though, and we have a woodshed attached to the cabin, and there's a padlock on the woodshed. It's not locked, but it's there holding the doors together, and the door was wide open. The padlock was put over on the side, hanging off of one hook, and the door was wide open on the woodshed. Well, that would take ambidextrous hands to open the woodshed door. So I think
Yeah.
a mischievous juvenile that likes to come through. I have a little welcome flag that hangs on a shepherd's hook, and occasionally that's flipped to a different position on the shepherd's hook. So I think...
And once it was folded.
Yeah, it actually folded on top of the shepherd's hook. So I think we have a family with a juvenile that likes to come through the yard when we're not here and just does little things, but nothing aggressive. So.
Yeah, right. And the reason I asked you that was because just when you think, because I'm sure you're going through the same thing I did years ago, you're going to think, golly, I wonder if they're still around. I wonder if they still come around here.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah.
here's the answer. Here's the answer to your question. Are you going to go home tonight and eat dinner?
Yeah, they wander through, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's just it. See, that if you live within their territory,
right.
They'll be around.
And the odd thing is, because like you said, that they're curious and they'll observe you. We have, if you go where we are, there's a little embankment on the one side. And what I found over that way is a bunch of trees that have been pushed over. A huge tree was bent and broken. And then there's like pine boughs and different trees that have been almost like the hunting blinds, except it's big enough for a Sasquatch to stand under in case, like, say, inclement weather and they wanted a little tent area to stand under. If you are in that position and you're looking towards our cabin, you can see right down to our front yard perfectly from that vantage point.
Yeah, well, that's probably where they spy on you from, probably.
I'm thinking, because there's a well-worn path over that way, and that's where there's an area of 5 different tree arches in that area. So, and they're varying sizes, which makes me think that they're arched to indicate their family.
Yeah, I'm not sure about, what I found about the arches is that they seem to have several different uses, and that they can use arches for several different things. I've heard it speculated that they use arches to trip deer up, or to block deer from running a certain direction. They're
like the golden arches of McDonald's. I mean, they literally just go from one point to another, and if you were to spring it, it's only going to spring straight up. So I'm thinking that it's more of a territory marker with an indication of number in the family rather than an actual hunting marker. But it's pure speculation, like you said. Who knows what they are?
Yeah, it needs more study.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it needs. Well, I feel about it this way: the more eyes out there, and the more people that we get aware of it, the better. Because then, maybe somebody can come up with yet another explanation that has nothing to do with hands, and right. Somebody doing or something doing this, and if they can prove that, more power to them. But
I gotta say, even after having seen the one here in our front yard, even though it terrified me that morning, I really have no qualms about being out there horseback riding in the woods than I did before I saw it, because I don't think of them as anything different other than another wild animal, and I'm going to take the same precaution if I saw a coyote, I saw a bear, I saw a Sasquatch. It's like, I'm not going to go looking for them. I'm certainly not going to go provoking them. You wouldn't go poking a bear, and I'm not going to poking a Sasquatch. But to look for their signs, and if I'm out in the woods and I see signs of a deer, I'm excited. If I see signs of a Sasquatch, I'm doubly excited. And I just keep taking photos and bringing back my info and putting it out there so that we can all learn more.
All right, folks. I hate to break in here, but the show's getting ready to end.
Oh, hey, Billy. Oh gosh, it's my fault. I ended up hogging the show, didn't I? Well,
well, everybody was asking if you was taking Bruce's job, so I mean,
Well, Bruce is probably just sitting back there going, well, it's about time I get a break, eh?
I'm sorry.
Actually, what I said was, if you took my slot, the ratings on the show would probably improve.
Well, I don't know about that. I tell you what, I miss coming into the chat room and being there with everybody. But right now I don't have internet service. All I have is my dumb phone. So that's the only way I can do anything. But I can email, and I can still come on to Facebook, stuff like that. I can still do all that. I have access. I just don't have a laptop to do it with. But I appreciate you letting me talk and everything, Billy, and I apologize for taking up so much time.
No, you were fine. We appreciate you calling in.
And that guy you had on, the guy you had in on last week, he's not full of it. He was spot on.
Yeah.
Remember that guy? You were off the air, and I tried to call in then too, and I had the speakerphone on and it didn't go through, and Bruce was like, "Well, no way there." But it was right after that guy called up and said that guy's full of crap, and I was like, well, I'm thinking he's spot on myself. But it was over the UFO thing. Yeah, I remember.
Right.
But
all right. Well, thanks so much, Phil. We enjoyed. Appreciate you calling in.
And thank you guys for being there for us and everything. You guys take care, and we'll see you later, okay?
All right. Thanks a lot.
Bye, David. Thanks for everything.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Phil.
Bye. It was nice to chat.
Yeah, and Pam and Dave, we really appreciate you guys coming on. We know it takes time out of your probably busy schedule, so we do appreciate you coming on the show. We really had a good time.
I'm in my 60s. You're cutting into my sleep time, actually.
Yeah, I know. Hey, mine too.
So much because actually I was a nervous wreck to do this, but it was really good.
And
it's always great.
David.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, Pam, Dave, thanks so much. We really greatly appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks so much. It was a great time.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
You too. All right.
Good night.
Looks like we've tied up another show. We got 90 seconds left, so we're kind of out of time.
We're out of time, Billy. It was pretty interesting. I have to say that I'm not really a big proponent of tree twists, and not to say that there's no significance in them. It's just it hasn't been proven to my satisfaction that Sasquatch actually do those things, stick structures, tree twists, and things like that. But it is kind of interesting to hear people's theories on that.
Right, it is. And just let everyone know, next Tuesday night, of course, it's the second Tuesday of the month, so we're going to have a Topic Tuesday. So me and Bruce will be talking here over the next few days to figure out what topic we're going to do. But it would really help if y'all would give us some suggestions. So go to facebook.com/SasquatchWatchRadio or to our website at SasquatchWatchRadio.com. Any of those, and give us some suggestions on topics that we can discuss for Topic Tuesday. Bruce, do you have anything else? We're cutting out in about.
Billy, are you there?
Yeah. Do you have anything else before we cut out in 10 seconds?
So, Creature Weekend Summer Campout, June 24th to 28th. Check out the website, www.creatureweekend.com for details. Hope to see you there.
All right. Great. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Sasquatch Watch Radio. We appreciate every one of our listeners. We hope you enjoyed our program. Don't forget to tune in again next week for another fun and informative program. Please visit our website at www.sasquatchwatchradio.com and leave us a comment about the show. We want to hear from you. Until next time, keep on looking for the big guy.